I'm 28 years old girl, married for 3 years. I never imagined my marriage would be anything but smooth sailing. Kevin and I were both in our late 20s when we got married, and everything felt like it was falling into place. We had been together for a few years before getting engaged, so by the time we walked down the aisle, I thought we knew everything about each other. At the beginning, it felt like we were partners in every sense of the word. We made decisions together, planned our future together, and lived like we were building something that could last forever. But it didn't take long for things to shift. From the very beginning of our marriage, I started noticing something that I thought was odd. Kevin's mom, Linda, was constantly in the picture. I'm not talking about a casual check-in here and there. No, Linda called him every single day. And I don't just mean quick chats. She would spend hours on the phone with him, telling him everything from how to keep the house clean to what he should be eating for lunch. I had no issue with him being close to his mom, but this felt different. At first, I tried to tell myself that it was normal for him to talk to his mom. After all, families are important, right? And I didn't want to seem controlling or insecure. So I kept quiet about it, assuming I'd just get used to it over time. But over the months, it started to wear on me. It wasn't just the daily phone calls, it was the unsolicited advice that came with them. Linda didn't just comment on Kevin's life, she had opinions about everything we did as a couple. The most obvious example was when we moved into our first home together. I had spent months planning how I wanted to decorate it. I had a vision, and I was excited to make it our space. Then Linda stepped in. She took one look at the house and told me that it wasn't up to standard. She didn't like the color of the walls, didn't like the furniture I'd chosen, and didn't like the way I arranged everything. She insisted on helping us redecorate, even though I had already spent time and money on it. I tried to explain that I had it covered, but she didn't take no for an answer. I was furious. This was supposed to be our home, not a project for her. Kevin, however, brushed it off. He told me I was overreacting. She's just being helpful, he said. She's only trying to make things better for us. I didn't understand how he couldn't see how disrespectful it was. Soon after that, the financial issues began. Linda started making suggestions about how we should spend our money. She was involved in a business venture, and she insisted that Kevin should invest in it. The problem? Kevin and I had already talked about our financial goals, and they didn't align with what Linda was pushing. I told Kevin how I felt, but his response was that Linda was just looking out for us. It was like she had become a third party in our marriage, always trying to insert herself into decisions that should have been between the two of us. As if that wasn't enough, Linda started criticizing everything I did. The way I cooked dinner, the way I dressed, the way I cleaned, nothing was ever good enough. At family gatherings, she'd comment on how I wasn't doing enough for Kevin. You should cook him a bigger meal, she'd say. Or he needs to eat healthier, you know? I tried to let it slide at first. I didn't want to escalate things, but it felt like she was picking apart my every move. Whenever I tried to talk to Kevin about it, he would just dismiss it. She's just worried about us, he'd say. You need to understand that she only wants what's best. And then came the vacation. Linda decided to plan a family trip without even asking me. I found out through Kevin that she'd already booked everything. I wasn't consulted about the dates, the destination, or anything else. When I expressed my frustration to Kevin, he told me I was being too sensitive and that I should be grateful that Linda was doing something nice for us. It felt like I was losing control over my own life. Linda's influence was everywhere. Things took a darker turn when Linda became possessive of Kevin. She would call him constantly, asking him where he was, what he was doing, and who he was with. I could feel the tension building between us, and it wasn't just me noticing. Kevin started getting defensive whenever I would question his relationship with his mom. It was as if he couldn't see how her behavior was suffocating us. Then I found out I was pregnant. You'd think that would have been a joyful moment for both of us. Instead, it became another opportunity for Linda to step in. She began giving me unsolicited parenting advice, even though I hadn't asked for any. She criticized my choices, from how I planned to decorate the nursery to how I should care for the baby once it was born. I felt like I had lost all sense of control in my own life. It got to the point where Kevin and I were fighting constantly. I felt like I was fighting him, fighting Linda, and fighting for my place in my own marriage. Every argument seemed to involve Linda in some way. The breaking point came when Linda criticized my career. She said that I wasn't balancing my work and home life well enough, and that I was neglecting Kevin and the baby. That was the last straw. I had reached my limit. I couldn't take it anymore. I had tried to be patient, to be understanding, but this was my life, my marriage, and my family. I was tired of being the villain in my own story. It was time to confront both Kevin and Linda. Enough was enough. And so I decided that it was time for a change. A big one. Update 1. I had reached a point where I couldn't ignore it any longer. Linda's constant interference had become impossible to avoid. From the constant phone calls to her unsolicited advice, it felt like she was suffocating me. I knew I had to confront Kevin. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. So I asked him to sit down with me one evening, after dinner, when we were both at home. I started by telling him that Linda's constant presence in our lives was starting to tear us apart. It wasn't just the little things anymore, the comments about the house, the decisions we were making about our future, and especially how she seemed to think she had a say in everything we did. I explained that it wasn't just annoying, it was damaging. Every time she stepped in, it felt like I was losing a little bit of control over my own life. Kevin didn't take it well. He immediately became defensive, his voice raised a little. He said I was overreacting, that Linda didn't mean any harm, and that I needed to learn to deal with her, because that was just how she was. He called her a strong personality and claimed that I needed to be more understanding. I felt a knot in my stomach. I had expected him to at least try to understand where I was coming from, but it felt like he was dismissing everything I had said. I couldn't let it go. I explained everything. How she had taken over our home's decoration, how she tried to interfere with our finances, how she was constantly criticizing me at family events. It wasn't just one thing. It was constant. It was like she was always there, in the background, undermining me. I told him that I was feeling drained, mentally and emotionally. I was losing myself in this marriage because of her constant presence, and Kevin didn't even seem to notice. But Kevin didn't change his stance. He insisted that Linda was just trying to be involved and that I shouldn't see it as an attack. He kept defending her, saying she was just trying to help. The worst part? He didn't even acknowledge how hurt I was. His response was the same each time: she means well. The next day, I couldn't let it go. I called Linda directly. I felt like if I didn't do something now, nothing would change. I told her that I appreciated her concern, but that I didn't need her to control every part of my life. I told her that I needed space to make my own decisions with Kevin, and that I was tired of feeling like I was living under her shadow. Linda didn't take it well either. She became defensive almost immediately. She accused me of not appreciating everything she had done for us, for the help she had given us, for the advice she had given Kevin. She guilt-tripped me, saying that I was being ungrateful. She said that if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have this or that, and I should be thankful for everything she did. Kevin, of course, didn't take my side. Again, he claimed that she was just trying to be helpful and that I needed to calm down. I couldn't believe it. It felt like I was fighting this battle alone. Every time I tried to express my feelings, Kevin just defended Linda, no matter what she did. It made me feel like I was the villain in my own marriage. Things didn't get any better after that. Linda began to isolate me from family events. Whenever I showed any interest in going, she'd subtly suggest that maybe I needed to take a break or that I was too busy with other things. It was as if she was trying to erase me from the family. I could feel myself being pushed further and further away, and Kevin didn't seem to notice, or maybe he just didn't care. It didn't stop there. Linda took it to social media. She posted about her concern for our relationship, hinting at how I wasn't handling things well, and that maybe I needed help. It felt like a public attack on me, and I was furious. But once again, Kevin didn't see what was wrong with it. He said that her family had always been like that, and I should just get used to it. The emotional exhaustion started to take its toll. Every conversation with Kevin felt like it ended in frustration. No matter what I said, it didn't seem like he was hearing me. I had hoped that he would understand the strain it was putting on our relationship, but it felt like I was hitting a brick wall every time. I needed advice, so I turned to my friends. When I explained the situation, they couldn't believe it. They all told me I wasn't overreacting. They said I had every right to stand my ground, to set boundaries with Linda. They encouraged me to stop letting her dictate my life and my marriage. I tried to set those boundaries, but it didn't work. I told Linda that while I respected her opinions, I didn't need constant interference in my decisions. I tried to make it clear that I wasn't pushing her away, but I needed some space to live my life without her controlling everything. But Kevin wasn't happy about it. He expressed disappointment in me, saying that by pushing his mother away, it felt like I was attacking her. The situation was only getting worse. It felt like it was becoming more toxic by the day. Kevin was caught between me and his mother, and every time he defended her, I felt more and more alone. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep fighting this battle. It seemed like I was losing him to her. Update 2. After everything that had happened, I knew I had to do something drastic. I couldn't keep living in a marriage that felt like it was slipping away. The constant tension, the arguments, the constant presence of Linda, it was suffocating. I decided to have one final heart-to-heart with Kevin. I waited until we had some quiet time together, without distractions. I knew this conversation would be crucial. I told him I felt like I couldn't breathe in my own marriage anymore. I explained that I couldn't live like this any longer, with Linda constantly hovering over us. I told him I was tired of being in a relationship where it felt like his mother was always in control. I reminded him of all the little things, the constant undermining, and how I had tried to be patient, but just couldn't anymore. For the first time, Kevin seemed to listen. There was a shift in his eyes, and I could tell something clicked in his mind. He admitted that he hadn't realized how much Linda's behavior was affecting me. He said he saw how it had been building up, but he never fully understood how much it was hurting our relationship until I put it all out there. Kevin told me that we needed to do something about it, and that's when he suggested we see a marriage counselor. I was hesitant at first, unsure of how that would help, but I knew I couldn't keep going down this path. I agreed. We set up an appointment, hoping it would give us the tools to handle the strain that Linda had caused. I called Linda to tell her about the counseling. I expected some pushback, but I wasn't prepared for how furious she would be. She didn't take it well at all. She accused me of trying to destroy our family dynamic, saying I was forcing Kevin to choose between her and me. Her voice was laced with anger, and she tried to make me feel guilty for seeking help. She claimed it was a betrayal, that I didn't appreciate everything she had done for us. The next family gathering was just as uncomfortable as I had feared. Kevin and I arrived together, but Linda's passive-aggressive comments were all I could focus on. She made several recavens about how our marriage was apparently on the verge of collapse, all directed at me. She implied that I was the problem and that if I hadn't been so difficult, everything would have been fine. At first, I tried to brush it off, but it kept building up inside me. Kevin stayed quiet, not stepping in to defend me, and I felt more alone than ever. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living like this. I needed to take control of my own life, and I needed to set boundaries, not just with Linda, but with Kevin too. So I gave him an ultimatum. It was either me or Linda. I couldn't continue being in a relationship where his mother's influence was stronger than our bond. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about us, our future, and my sanity. Kevin didn't know how to respond. I could see the conflict in his eyes. He didn't want to choose between us, but it was becoming clear that something had to change. After that conversation, I started focusing on myself more. I began putting more time and effort into my career, doing things for me that didn't involve Kevin or his family. I spent more time with friends who supported me, rebuilding the parts of my life that had gotten lost in the chaos. Slowly, I started feeling like I could stand on my own 2 feet again, without being constantly dragged down by Linda's influence. Linda, however, wasn't going to let go that easily. She started to manipulate Kevin, guilt-tripping him into thinking I was the one causing all the problems. She told him that I was being controlling, that I didn't understand how much he owed her for everything she had done for him over the years. She tried to position herself as the victim, but it was becoming clear that she was the one causing the damage in our marriage. Kevin started to realize that Linda was the common denominator in most of our issues. After a few more tense weeks, he began to distance himself from her more. He started to see that I wasn't the one pushing her away. She had pushed me away first. He started making small changes, spending less time with her and defending me when she made her usual comments. My family began to see the changes too. They were finally on my side, telling me that I had every right to set boundaries with Linda. They reminded me that it wasn't normal for a mother-in-law to constantly interfere with her son's marriage. Their support gave me the strength to continue pushing for what I needed. Kevin and I began to rebuild our trust. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight, but we started to take small steps toward healthier boundaries. Every time Linda tried to step in, I made it clear that her interference was no longer welcome. I told her that we needed space to be our own family, and that she had to respect that. It wasn't a popular message, but it was one I was ready to send. The consequences were immediate. Linda stopped calling as often and began withdrawing from family events, but she didn't stay quiet. She began spreading rumors that I was controlling and that I was isolating Kevin. She painted herself as the victim, trying to turn the rest of the family against me. It felt like I was constantly fighting an invisible battle, but Kevin was more determined than ever to protect our marriage from her influence. We were still working through the fallout, but for the first time in months, I felt hopeful. The tension between us had lessened, and I could finally see a path forward. It wasn't going to be easy, but it felt like we were moving in the right direction. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but we were building something that had been sorely missing for so long, a foundation of trust and respect. There was still a long way to go, but I was determined to fight for our future, and for the first time in a long while, Kevin seemed ready to fight alongside me. Update 3. After our confrontation with Linda, I thought things might finally start to get easier, but it only got worse. Linda stopped speaking to me entirely. She refused to visit our house, even when we had family events, and it felt like she was just shutting me out completely. At first, I thought maybe this was a good thing. It would give us space, allow Kevin and me to work things out without her constant interference. But instead, it just made everything more awkward. It was like this huge, invisible wall had been built between us, and it wasn't coming down anytime soon. Kevin, as expected, was feeling torn. On one hand, he didn't want to lose his relationship with his mother. On the other, he didn't want to lose me either. The situation was causing him so much stress, and it seemed like he couldn't make a decision without second-guessing himself. Every time we talked about it, I could see him struggling to find some middle ground, but there was no middle ground. He was either going to support me in our marriage, or he was going to continue letting his mother control everything. The indecision was making me feel like I was stuck in limbo. Linda didn't make it any easier. She started sending Kevin passive-aggressive text messages, guilt-tripping him about how our little family wasn't complete without her. It was like she was trying to manipulate him into thinking I was the problem. She made it clear that she felt excluded, and in typical Linda fashion, she framed everything as if she was the victim. I knew this was her attempt to turn Kevin against me, but I had no idea how far she was willing to go to make me look bad. One night, Kevin and I had a huge argument. It was the first time we really went head-to-head about his mother. I told him that I couldn't keep living like this, constantly walking on eggshells around Linda and feeling like I wasn't allowed to have a voice in my own marriage. I told him he had to start setting clear boundaries with her, or I couldn't continue being in this relationship. Kevin, however, accused me of being too hard on Linda. He said she meant well, and that I needed to understand that she was just trying to be involved. I was furious. I told him I didn't need a mother-in-law involved in every aspect of our life, and that I had a right to be heard and respected. It felt like we were getting nowhere, and the gap between us seemed to grow wider by the day. Then things took a turn for the worse. Linda, desperate to remain in control, started calling Kevin's workplace. She'd ask how he was doing, even though he was perfectly fine. I was stunned. It was such an invasive thing to do, and Kevin told me it made him uncomfortable. But of course, he didn't know how to stop it. I couldn't believe that at his age, his mother still had this much influence over his life, and I didn't know how much longer I could keep dealing with it. As if that wasn't enough, Linda decided to organize a family gathering for her side of the family. When I tried to suggest dates, she overruled me completely, insisting it was better if I just showed up. I felt completely sidelined, like I had no say in our own family events. Kevin didn't step in to support me, and I could feel the tension building. I didn't want to cause a scene, but it was getting harder to just smile and go along with everything. But I wasn't going to back down. At the next family event, I finally started standing up for myself in small ways. I began asserting my opinions more, even if it was uncomfortable. I wasn't going to let Linda walk all over me any longer, and slowly Kevin started to notice. I could see it in his eyes. He was starting to realize that I wasn't going to just accept being disrespected. It was a small victory, but it felt like a step in the right direction. Kevin finally started confronting Linda. He had several one-on-one conversations with her, telling her that he couldn't let her dictate our relationship. It was a relief to see him finally see things my way, even if it had taken this long. It wasn't easy for him, though. Linda didn't take it well, and she accused me of trying to steal her son away. She started spreading rumors that I was too controlling and that Kevin would be better off without me if I couldn't get along with her. It was frustrating to watch. Kevin told me that he didn't like how his mother was treating me, but he also didn't know how to make her understand. It felt like he was caught between two worlds, the woman he had spent his life with and the woman he had married. It was exhausting, and I didn't know how much longer I could handle it. Finally, we went to therapy. It was a breakthrough moment, but not in the way I had hoped. During the session, we finally managed to talk about Linda's role in our lives. The therapist encouraged Kevin to set firm boundaries, to take control of the situation. But when it came down to it, Kevin still seemed hesitant to fully confront his mother. It was like he was stuck in this cycle of guilt and obligation, and I wasn't sure how to help him break out of it. Then came Linda's ultimatum. She told Kevin that he had to choose between her and me. Either he was with her and his family, or he was with me and our future together. I couldn't believe it. She was forcing him to make an impossible choice. I told Kevin this wasn't something he should have to decide. It wasn't a decision anyone should have to make, but Linda wasn't going to give us peace. Kevin spent days thinking it over, trying to find a way to please both of us. The stress was starting to take its toll on our relationship. We weren't talking as much, and when we did, it was tense. It felt like everything was falling apart, and I didn't know how much longer I could keep pretending that everything was fine. Then Kevin suggested something that shook me to my core. He said maybe it would be a good idea for us to spend some time apart, to figure things out. He said it might help him see things more clearly. I felt betrayed. I had been fighting for us, and now it felt like he was asking for space to figure out where his loyalties lay. I was angry, but also deeply hurt. I realized then that if I kept letting Linda control everything, I would lose myself. I had to make a decision about our future. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I could stay with someone who couldn't prioritize me over his mother. Update 4. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. The constant strain from Kevin's inability to choose between me and his mother had finally reached a breaking point. I decided to move out. I packed my things and went to stay with my sister for a while, needing the space to think. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but I couldn't keep living in a marriage where I felt like I was constantly being pushed aside for his mother. I had to step away, even if it meant taking a step back from everything. Kevin, of course, called me several times after I left. Each conversation was filled with apologies and guilt-tripping. He admitted that he hadn't realized how much damage Linda had caused, but it felt like the same conversation over and over. I heard the same words, the same promises, but no real action. He apologized for not standing up to his mom sooner, but I wasn't sure anymore that he was truly ready to make a real change. The guilt he felt about her was so ingrained in him that it was hard for him to even see clearly. It felt like we were stuck in this endless loop. Then, Linda called me directly. I had been expecting it, but hearing her voice again after everything that had happened was like a punch to the gut. She accused me of breaking up her family. She said that if I didn't come back immediately, I was the one destroying everything. Her tone was manipulative, as always, filled with guilt and cruelty. She made it clear that if I didn't comply, I would be the villain. I snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. I told her, in no uncertain terms, that I was done. I was done being the scapegoat. I was done being treated like I was less than her, less than the priority in Kevin's life. I told her that if she wanted to be angry, she could be, but I wouldn't let her manipulate me any longer. I hung up the phone and felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. Finally, I had said what I needed to say, but the damage was done, and there was no going back. Kevin came to visit me at my sister's house later that week. He looked broken, his eyes red from crying. He sat across from me, barely able to look me in the eye, and admitted that he didn't know how to fix things. He said he didn't want to lose me, but the loyalty to his mother was so deeply ingrained in him that he didn't know where to go from here. He was stuck between trying to keep the peace with Linda and holding on to what we had. I listened, but part of me was angry. Angry because it had taken him this long to see the truth. Angry because I had been fighting this battle alone for so long, and only now was he admitting how hard it had been for him. It was hard to not feel betrayed by his inability to act sooner, but at the same time, I understood that the years of manipulation from his mother had created a complicated mess. It was then that I spoke to my family about everything. My father, in particular, was firm with me. He told me I deserved better. He reminded me that I shouldn't have to keep sacrificing myself and my happiness for a relationship that wasn't healthy. He told me that I couldn't keep letting someone, especially Linda, undermine my well-being. His words hit me hard, but they also gave me clarity. I needed to stop letting Linda have this power over me, and I needed to make a choice. That night, I had a moment of clarity. I realized that no matter how much I loved Kevin, I couldn't keep tolerating Linda's behavior. She would always find a way to tear us apart if we didn't stand up to her. I knew I had to make a stand, and I wasn't going to wait for Kevin to figure it out on his own. I needed to take control of my own life again. I sat down with Kevin the next day and told him that I had reached my breaking point. I couldn't keep living in this uncertainty. I told him that I needed him to make a choice, me or his mother. I couldn't keep being in a relationship where I was constantly competing with her for his attention and loyalty. If he couldn't choose me, then I couldn't continue. There was a long silence. It felt like hours. Finally, Kevin spoke. He said that he would choose me. He promised that he would set firm boundaries with Linda, that he wouldn't let her manipulate us any longer. I wanted to believe him, but after everything, it was hard to know if it was too late. I needed to see real change, not just words. The hardest part was breaking the news to Linda. I called her and told her, in no uncertain terms, that I was done being treated like a second-class citizen in my own marriage. I told her that I wasn't going to tolerate her interference any longer. Linda's reaction was explosive. She lashed out, calling me every name under the sun. She said I would ruin Kevin's life and that no one would ever love him like she did. She threatened to cut all ties with us if we didn't apologize. It was the same manipulative tactic she had always used, but this time I wasn't backing down. I had made my decision. For the first time, Kevin stood up to his mother. He told her that if she couldn't accept our relationship, she was free to leave. He told her that our marriage was his priority, and that if she couldn't respect that, then she was welcome to walk away. It was a defining moment. I could see it in his eyes. He was finally choosing me. The aftermath wasn't easy. Linda didn't speak to us for weeks, and Kevin's family gave us the cold shoulder. But despite the tension, I started to feel a weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again. Kevin and I worked hard on rebuilding our relationship. We continued therapy, and Kevin kept his promise to establish clear boundaries with Linda. It wasn't easy. She tried to test us every chance she got. but we stood firm. Slowly, things began to heal. Linda's interference became less frequent, and I began to feel like I was part of the family again, not just an outsider. It hasn't been easy, but we're finally getting there. Our marriage is stronger than ever. Kevin is standing up for us, and we're building a life together without the constant interference of his mother. It feels like we're starting a new chapter, one where we are the priority, not Linda. And for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about the future. Update 5. It's been a few months since Kevin and I took that big step in choosing each other over the constant interference from Linda. I'm happy to report that things have calmed down significantly. Linda has distanced herself from our lives, and while she occasionally tries to reach out, Kevin has remained firm in his boundaries. It's been such a relief not having to deal with her daily drama and manipulation. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can breathe again without the weight of her constant presence in our marriage. Our relationship has improved in ways I didn't think possible. Kevin and I now communicate openly about everything. We talk about our dreams, our goals, and even our frustrations. Gone are the days when I felt like I was constantly fighting for his attention, trying to get him to see my side of things. We've learned to listen to each other more, and I've learned how to express my needs without fear of being dismissed or undermined. We've also taken the time to work on ourselves as a couple. We've spent more time together, focusing on what we both want in our marriage without the outside interference that had always been a part of our lives. For once, we're building a future that's truly ours, free from anyone else's influence. It's been a journey of growth for both of us. I've learned to stand up for myself, to set boundaries and stick to them. And Kevin has learned how to prioritize our relationship, not just his mother's influence. We've both changed in ways that make us stronger as a couple. Linda did try to visit us recently. She showed up unannounced, expecting everything to go back to normal. But this time, it was different. Kevin made it clear that she needed to respect our space. He told her that while they could have a relationship, she would need to respect the boundaries we had set. Linda apologized for her actions, but I wasn't sure I was ready to forgive her entirely. I'm still not sure. It's hard to just forget everything that happened, but I'm willing to move forward without carrying that weight around anymore. Kevin's family, too, has started to notice the changes in our relationship. They've begun to understand why we've set the boundaries we have, and while not everyone agrees with everything, there's been a noticeable shift in their support. We're slowly reintegrating into family events, but now it's on our terms. We're not letting Linda, or anyone else, dictate what our lives should look like. It feels like we're finally being accepted for who we are, not just as part of someone else's family. The constant ultimatums from Linda are a thing of the past. There's no longer this looming pressure hanging over us, making us feel like we had to choose between her and our marriage. I can finally breathe easy knowing that I won't have to pick sides anymore. Kevin and I have our lives back, and we're in control of our future. Speaking of the future, we've started talking seriously about what comes next. We're discussing buying a house together, something that felt impossible a few months ago when we were both so caught up in the chaos. We've even talked about expanding our family. For the first time, we're actually on the same page about everything. It feels like we're building a real future, one that we've chosen together. I've learned a lot about setting boundaries and standing firm in them. Before, I used to feel guilty for wanting peace in my marriage, for wanting to have control over the way my life was going. But now, I understand that it's not selfish to protect my relationship. It's necessary. And while we've made huge progress, I know that dealing with Linda's influence won't be a one-time thing. She's not someone who will just disappear. But I feel confident now that Kevin and I can handle whatever comes our way. We've built a stronger foundation, and I'm not afraid to defend it. Our friends have been incredibly supportive throughout this whole process. It's been so comforting to know that there are people who understand what we've been through and are rooting for us. They've watched us struggle, and now they're watching us thrive. It's nice to have that network of support, knowing we're not alone in this. At the end of the day, we're both happier. We've learned how to navigate family dynamics without sacrificing our own relationship. There's no more tension, no more walking on eggshells. We've found a balance that works for us, and it feels like we've turned a corner. I no longer feel like I'm fighting for Kevin's attention or his loyalty. Our marriage is finally ours again, without the constant influence of Linda. I can finally say that I feel free. Free from the chains of constant judgment, criticism, and manipulation. Our marriage is healthy, and it's ours. And I won't let anyone take that away from us. Looking ahead, I'm hopeful. We've been through a lot, but we've come out the other side stronger than ever. We're starting a new chapter of our lives together, one that's free from the past and full of promise. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. It wasn't easy, but I truly believe that we've learned and grown through this process. And I'm proud of the place we're at now.